Some of these brutally hot summer days have been perfect for a rewatch, revisiting a beloved television show that you just haven't seen in a while. For me, that show this summer was the seminal early aughts HBO series, The Wire, a dramatized reflection on Baltimore politics and society written by a longtime local beat reporter. Alongside hours of air-conditioned entertainment, it has also been a reminder that spiritual wisdom can come from unexpected places. There's a scene in the fourth season in which one of the veteran detectives, Bunk Moreland, is training a younger officer. They arrive at a complicated crime scene, and instead of telling her to look harder or think faster, Bunk offers a surprising instruction: soft eyes. Soft eyes, he intimates, are what allows someone to see the whole picture. If your gaze is too fixed, too narrow, too anxious to prove a theory, you'll miss what is actually there. But with soft eyes, you begin to notice connections. You see what belongs together and what doesn't. You stop merely looking and begin seeing. It's a bit strange to hear a law enforcement officer on the job speak of softness. The lesson feels somewhat out of place. But later that same season, the phrase appears again in an entirely different setting. A former police officer has become a teacher in one of Baltimore's struggling public schools. Overwhelmed by the complexity of his new position and the challenges of his students' lives, his anxiety as the school year approaches is apparent. A veteran teacher notices and quietly tells him, "Soft eyes. You've got to see these kids with soft eyes." The second use of the phrase takes on a whole new level of beauty when those soft eyes are trained on human beings. Soft eyes are not simply about observation. They're about compassion. They are the ability to look at another human being and see more than behavior, more than first impressions. Soft eyes see history. They see struggle. They see possibility. Soft eyes refuse to reduce a person to the hardest thing about them. Soft eyes. That phrase has been echoing in my mind because I cannot imagine a better description of what we are called to do at this particular moment in our Jewish calendar. Last night, we welcomed the Hebrew month of Elul. For the next month, Judaism begins its slow, deliberate movement toward our high holy days. In many communities, the shofar begins to sound every morning during Elul. Special psalms are added into daily prayers, and as individuals, we begin the work of cheshbon nefesh, an accounting of our souls. But before Elul asks us to examine ourselves, I believe it asks us something even more basic. It asks us to soften our eyes. It's remarkable how often our tradition speaks about eyes. In fact, the very first human failure began with sight. In the Garden of Eden, the first two humans saw that the tree was good for eating, desirable to the eyes. Long before there was action, there was vision. How we see shapes how we act. Our tradition also knows the frightening power of the Ayin Hara, the evil eye, an eye clouded by jealousy, resentment, or possessiveness that has the capacity to diminish the world around it. The biblical Sarah turns hardened eyes towards her handmaiden Hagar when she was able to bring a child into the world. Those hard eyes set in motion a tragic unraveling of a family. Again and again, Torah reminds us that vision is never neutral. The eye can become an instrument of fear, comparison, suspicion, and envy, but the eye can also become the root of immense good. In Pirkei Avot, a great rabbi asks his students, what is the proper path to which a person should cleave? One of the wisest students answered with just two words: Ayin Tova, a good eye. Not brilliance, not scholarship, not extraordinary piety, simply a good eye. Our commentators explain that an Ayin Tova is the ability to be satisfied with what we have rather than measuring ourselves against others. It is freedom from envy and an attitude of kindness towards others, their dreams, their accomplishments, even their possessions. Someone with an Ayin Tova can rejoice in another person's blessings, knowing that another person's light does not diminish their own. Perhaps that's what soft eyes really are. Generous. Eyes that choose blessing over suspicion. Eyes that look first for the image of God. Eyes that refuse to let fear have the final word. One of my favorite teachings about eyes comes from the great Hasidic master, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. He asked a wonderfully simple question. Why did God create us with two eyes? After all, he theorized, with all of his great 18th century knowledge of ophthalmology, we could see perfectly well if we were created with only one. Levi Yitzchak taught that one eye is meant for looking outward, to recognize the goodness in another person, to notice the qualities we can admire and we can learn from. The second eye is turned inward, to gaze on ourselves honestly, seeing virtues and vices alike. One eye for the quality of others, one eye watchfully and truthfully on ourselves. How different our world might look if we always saw in this manner. Because so often we do exactly the opposite. We become experts at spotting others' flaws while remaining remarkably gentle with our own. Elul invites us to make that switch. See others generously. See ourselves honestly. That is an Ayin Tova. That is soft eyes. Because how we see determines how we live. And yet, if we're honest, softening our eyes is at times easier said than done. There are real reasons our gaze becomes guarded. When others look at us with suspicion, it becomes tempting to meet the world with suspicion of our own. When our hearts have been bruised, hard eyes can begin to feel like armor. And perhaps they are. But armor comes with a cost. Armor protects the heart, but can also prevent the heart from loving. Elul is not asking us to be naive. Judaism has never confused compassion with vulnerability to the real evils of the world. Our Torah portion this week even reminds us of the necessity of justice. We are commanded to appoint judges, pursue righteousness, to distinguish between right and wrong. Justice requires clear eyes, but righteousness, that requires soft ones. Our eyes can be discerning without becoming cynical. We can remain vigilant without surrendering our capacity for empathy. We can refuse hatred without allowing hatred to reshape the way we see the world. That may be one of the holiest acts of resistance available to us. The Hasidic masters teach that Elul is the month when Hamelech Basadeh, the king is in the field. Unlike during the upcoming days of awe when the sovereign sits upon the throne in majesty, during Elul, God leaves the palace and comes out into the fields, into the ordinary places where we actually live. And we are invited to go out and meet God. As I do each year, I wonder, how does one prepare to greet God? In our finest clothing? Of course, but that does not come first. With words of praise and glory, of course, but they don't come first either. We greet God first with our eyes. Because before we ever lift our eyes toward God, God's already looking at us, and we get to choose how we look back. Will we come this year with hard eyes, guarded, suspicious, convinced that nothing can change, or will we come this year with soft eyes, ready to notice grace, to notice possibility, ready to believe that everything can change? Because when we step into that field, we are standing before the one who has always looked upon us with an Ayin Tova, the God who sees beyond our failures, who remembers our potential when we have forgotten it ourselves, who never mistakes our worst moments for our entire story. If that is how God chooses to see us, then perhaps the greatest preparation for Rosh Hashanah is in learning to see as God sees, to look at another person with greater generosity, to look at ourselves with both greater honesty and greater compassion, to soften the gaze that has become hardened by disappointment, grief, fear, and anger. We began with a detective trying to solve a mystery. Bunk Moreland taught that young detective that the only way to solve a mystery is with soft eyes. Our tradition teaches that the greatest mystery is not a crime scene, it's the human soul. Yours, mine, the soul of the person sitting just beside you here. And the only way to truly see a soul, our own or someone else's, is with soft eyes. So as we make our way toward Rosh Hashanah, as we prepare to walk out into the field to greet our sovereign, may we adorn ourselves not only with beautiful clothing, but with beautiful vision. May we merit an Ayin Tova, soft enough to notice God's presence, soft enough to recognize the divine image in one another, soft enough to see ourselves truthfully without despair, soft enough to begin again. Chodesh Tov and Shabbat Shalom.